Yes.
Welcome back. This is Daybreak and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Dr. Davji, coming to you. On Monday, you did not turn up for the presser that was set to be issued by the whole of the nation approach and the negotiations that were to happen in good faith to address the strike. And the common denominator is that you all appreciate the impact this is having on the Kenyan people who are unable to access healthcare services across health centers in the country. But you did not show up for that press conference on Monday. Why?
Our business is just not to appear on press conferences.
Yes.
Our business in this thing is to get solution. And therefore, there was no solution yet. And when we were having meetings with government, there are things that were not implemented, that were not agreed upon, where we had the GOK positions in them and we have the union position. For example, on the issue of internship, the government was saying that they cannot discuss it. It has to go through the court process, whether it takes 1 year or 2 years before we have a discussion. But as a union, we are saying we have a collective bargaining agreement that need to be implemented, and therefore they should be posted immediately based on that. So that was a stalemate on that issue. The issue of postgraduate training that are self-sponsored, that are enslaved in level 6 and level 5 hospitals, where they work every day, they're in the rota, they actually generate revenue for those hospitals and they have no earnings. The government said they don't know them and they have no business having those doctors.
National or the counties?
Both national government. They say they have no business with these consultants in those hospitals. Even if they are doing if they are working in the rota, it's not their business. They cannot pay them. Even if they should do 3 hours. In fact, they show a lot of disdain on these registrar doctors. So as we are insisting, if that is the case, then stop putting them on these rotas of 24 hours. They have to be remunerated for the money they generate in this particular hospital, because that is slavery. So we are at a different stand on this.
But here is a very critical component, because why I did inquire about your absence on the Monday press statement, which was supposed to have been issued in the committee chaired by the head of public service, was because of the preceding meeting on Sunday, which went into the night on that was the day before Monday. Yeah. And you separately met the Council of Governors and the national government, and I do understand that for the postgraduate doctors to be released, the counties have agreed.
What happened is this, we met the county government and agreed on the issues that were pending with the county government. We met the national government and agreed on the issues. Then in each our agreement, the things that we didn't agree, we had union positions and government positions, like about 5 issues. Union position, government issues. Yeah. Then they ask us to sign a return to work formula with those pending issues. There's no solution. We, as a union, we are not dictators in our union. We are not having absolute powers. The powers lies with the members. We told this committee that because we have had this return to work formula, let's go and discuss it with our council and our members and see whether they can compromise on these issues. So on Monday, we actually asked them, it's impossible to have a meeting on Monday. We can have a meeting on Tuesday. But then they insisted, let's meet at 4 p.m. That time, we were meeting with our members, discussing this thing that we had stalemates on. For example, the issue of interns, the issue of postgraduate stipend payment for these doctors, the issue of employment of doctors that we were demanding, the issue of minimum service. These are things that we were discussing. And therefore, around 2 p.m., we informed the government that we cannot make it as early as far as expected, because we're still in this meeting. In this particular meeting, the union leadership make a stand that we cannot have a return to work formula with 2 stands in critical issues. That's no solution. We must go back to the table and negotiate these issues. And that's when they started throwing tantrums on the media, saying that we have not turned up for the meeting.
But on Sunday night, there was the draft agreement that you guys had.
There was no solution to those things. Yeah. For example, the intern issue had government positions and union positions. The employment issue had government positions and union position. The issue of postgraduate training and stipend for doctors, government positions, union position. The issue of this issue had two different positions. The issue of changing doctors from contract to permanent and pensionable terms, there are 2 positions. So that's the reality. Even the issue of the contract doctors in KNH who are being paid 1/3 of the salary of the other doctors, we had 2 positions. So you can't have 5 issues that have 2 positions, and then you say we have a solution. We have to agree on them. We can't send a return to work formula for the sake of it, because that's what we're going to do there. You send a return to work formula, then they say, this is our position, which is not the position of the union. There's no compromise.
And did you sign the draft agreement?
The initializing draft agreement was done by our lawyers. Yes. Why? To show that that's where we were, that's where we stood. They initialize the pages so that nobody changes them, so that these stalemates can be seen. That's the reality. And I want to ask, because
that's what I have here, the return to work agreement formula.
Initialized.
which was signed on the behalf of the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union by your representative.
It's not signed.
Yeah.
It's not signed.
Yeah.
It's initialized. And that's the pages. That, you know, when you are negotiating, when you are agreeing, every time you meet, you go through the documents and say, these are things we've agreed today. This is what we have. So that next day you know where you start from. Somebody does not edit this particular document. So when you have two positions,
yes,
in a return to work agreement, there's no agreement in those positions.
And I see it also has the component of the internship on number 2, the
yes,
GOK position and
yes,
the KMPDU position as well.
It means there's no agreement in that issue. It means that the issue need to be, because if we have a problem of internship,
yeah,
then government has its position, the union has its positions. We have no compromise position. So how would you try to work with two different positions?
And after that meeting, yeah, before you came back on Monday, you were to seek the intervention and the advice on the way forward from the advisory council. Which
they said it is not possible to go back to work when government have stood in their positions from the first day of the strike on those 4 critical issues. Number 1 is employment. In fact, the court asked us for minimum service. And the court ordered that level 3 facilities should have 2 doctors, 2 medical practitioners, 2 pharmacists, and 2 dentists. We have 5,000 level 3s. Mm-hmm. It means that we need to have 30,000 doctors in this place. Again, it talks about level 5, level 4, level 5, level 6. And in the entire country, we only have 5,000 doctors. So ideally, for us to comply to the minimum service, yes, the country has to hire about 30 doctors to start. And that's why, as a union, we say we are providing minimum services. And how are we doing this? We have chief officers in the counties that should be working. We have medical directors. We have medical superintendents who have been working. Those are the basis of our minimum services to make the strike effective and to make things move. So basically, in this return to work agreement, the critical things that are not agreed upon, that we cannot wish away and say, no, we have agreed. And these are things that are actually components of collective bargaining agreements. Okay. And you saw it, yep, that there was more of a chicanery being played against us by the government, because yes, we don't agree on signing this, and we say, let's go back and discuss this thing and build a consensus. Yesterday, the cabinet met and endorsed the reduction of the wages from 206 to 70,000. That tells you that us insisting that we have to build a consensus on these issues was critical. Otherwise, we're going to be played, and the interns are going to face an excessive exploitation. We're not going to have doctors employed. We're not going to have these medical registrars who are being exploited in the hospitals being paid. Okay. Yeah. Dr. Pokose, coming to you, because I'm looking at it from the bearing this is having on our medical, generally the country's healthcare system, already reeling under underfunding and the concerns over the welfare of the medical practitioner, which has largely been some of the myriad of challenges that have dotted this very noble profession. For example, we at the moment have 12 medical schools churning out 1,000 graduates, and we have resources that are not in tandem or commensurate with the speed of the graduates that we have from medical schools. I mean, how then can we sustain financially the medical system in our country when, besides the strike at the moment, generally, the speed at which we are training doctors and are unable to absorb them, generally? And this, I ask for your professional answer here. Then how then can we address this lack of parallel or commensurate speed with which we are allocating resources to address this disturbing problem that continues to affect the healthcare system in our country perpetually?
Thank you. According to the Abuja Declaration, 15% of our national budget should be able to go to health. We've not achieved that. We are actually at around 7%, between 6 and 7%, both at the national and county governments combined. And this is due to resource not being sufficient. There'll always be shortage of resources. Money will never be enough for us to deliver on all that services. And putting into that, and you look at our university programs, now you have parallel students, you have regular students. Yes. And out of that program, the number of doctors that we are churning into the market, the numbers are high. When you look at why the Ministry of Health was not able to post all the interns at the beginning, it's because they could not be able, they did not have enough budgetary allocation to post all the interns. And therefore, I think having consulted with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, they said, how do we make sure that all these interns are able to be trained so that we can have its sustainability, not just for once, and that is the end of it. You want to train all of them, and others will continue being coming, and you have to sustain this program. Therefore, and when you look at our constitution, training is a national function. Internship is the last part of our training, so for somebody, or the entry into the profession. So therefore, as a national function, that's a national, training is a national function. And that is why the national government now comes in to make sure that we are able to take care of the training of interns to make them enter into the medical profession. And therefore, I think from the SRC point of view, where they are able to look at the amount of money vis-a-vis the number, that is how they arrived at. I think their proposal was 50 to 70. But the president said, no, let's go to the maximum, which is 70. Now, when you go to the maximum, which is 70, then there crops up issues. Here you have that, even when we talk about, and you know, this is where the dishonesty now begins from. Because you have, out of this 70, the union expects some money to be given to them. The government expects...
The dishonesty is part of this.
I want clarity.
There's no clarity in wrong statement. There's no clarity in lies.
Let's have some order.
Let's
have some order.
But there's no clarity in saying lies.
Can I let's have some order. You will proceed with your line of thought. Just 5 seconds. Just 5 seconds. Does do they pay dues to the KMPDU?
Every doctor.
It's a yes or no answer.
The interns?
Yes.
Before they're posted, no.
No, okay. Yes, Dr. Proceed.
After they are posted, they pay.
Because there is...
When they get now the money, they pay to the union.
Yes.
Okay. When they are paid?
After.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's not reduce this thing. Let's not reduce the illegality that is being perpetrated on these interns from the dues being paid.
Dr. Dajji, let's have some order. Dr. Pukose, some order. You'll proceed. I'll give you the time to finish your line of thought. Hypothetically, if Dr. Brian is an intern, he's earning 50,000 for the purpose of this debate. Does he pay dues to the KMPDU?
Don't put his 50,000 because that is not...
Does he pay due if he's an
50,000? No, you don't pay. Wow. You can't pay because you're exploited. That is slavery. As we're saying, it should not be. We negotiated for doctors, interns, from 2011. In 2011, doctor interns were earning 140,000, 150,000. And in 2013, we signed a CBA where they were 357 because of the CBA that was disowned by the government. The now government offered 206,000.
Were they paying out of the 206,000?
Yes, they're paying.
So the challenge with the at the moment is the 70,000 is too small.
It's not the issue. Let me tell you, the issue is exploitation. It's irregular. I am so shocked that Pukose is the head of health committee in the parliament. It means when the policies are going to make, those are going to exploit this for further. I'm saying this because
get clarity.
Get clarity. Clarity is this. There's a negotiated CBA. No. There's a negotiated CBA.
Okay.
There's a negotiated CBA for wages. For wages. What gave us legal mandate by law for somebody to be a union member and be represented legally is union subscriptions, which is voluntary to from the doctors. The doctors must sign Form S to be part of the union.
Daktari,
therefore, if you have not signed...
I'll pause you because let's get some clarity at the best interest of time, because I had cut off Daktari from his line of thought so that he proceeds on time. And you have fair response to each other's queries. Of the 206,000 paid to the medical interns, were they paying dues to the KMPDU?
3,000.
3,000.
Yes.
The 70,000, which was the range also issued by Dr. Patrick Amoth also here on Newsnight, on Newsgang program about a fortnight ago. He also talked about a range of a maximum of 70,000, a minimum of 46,000.
That's an illegal document.
Okay, so what you are saying, what you are saying is the proposal by the national government of 70,000, there can be no deductions of dues because this amount is small, or what?
No amount is small.
Yes.
Brother, we don't reduce this issue to amounts that are being paid. It's the illegality, the sanctity of a policy agreement between employer and employee. This is not reduced to the issue of the union dues. We have those people who are privately, who are working like farm access or NGOs, but then they decide to pay union dues, they pay through impasse. So it's about the individual.
Let's talk about the interns.
It's about the protection.
We are talking about the interns.
We have the interns here who we have as members of the union who are prescribing to be represented legally on all grounds. And that's why they went ahead to make a policy that will exclude these intern doctors from the union. Why? To exploit them further. Yet that is against the Constitution, Article 41. So if I see a member of parliament who is also in charge of health committee speaking like this, then I'm worried. Not only for myself, but for the profession.
Okay, because I need to get Dr. Brian, Dr. Ravia, I come to the point again.
Yes.
Of course, out of these 70,000,
we can't talk about 70.
Other deductions.
It's illegal.
It's hypothetical.
It's a
for the purposes of this debate.
Yeah.
Of course, it's subject to negotiation, and it's one.
There's no negotiation when we have a CBA that
yes.
prescribes this.
Dr.
So unless you have a new CBA.
Okay, Dr.
Yes.
The point is that I or Dr. Brian is not the party. Of course, it's the government and KMPDU now negotiating on the way forward.
Yes.
What we are discussing here is that your concerns were the lessening of this amount from 206,000 to a proposal now of giving them 70,000.
It's not a proposal.
For this debate.
It's not a proposal.
Okay.
It's a violation.
Would you be okay? You said the 3,000 deduction at the 206,000 Kenya shillings that were paid the medical interns. You're okay with that? The 206,000.
It's not about being okay. It is what is in law.
Okay.
It is what is in the CBA.
Okay. How about
it's not about my feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you say paying about 70,000, you're putting the professional who has been skilled at the whims of political leaders who will decide what they want to pay and when they wish to pay it.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Brian.
I think Dr. Pukosa is a very clever politician, managing to turn this issue into an issue of 3,000 bob. I should actually advise him to pay his union dues. It's voluntary.
Yes,
because they should pay. These fees are set by members of the union. So whether you are earning 5,000, you will pay. But you asked a very important question, Abdi. You asked about prioritization in the sector.
Yes.
Can I just tell Honorable Mheshimiwa here that health sector is the only sector, and I'm looking at the 2024 policy budget. Everything we are talking about here is about money and the priority of government in the health sector. If you look at the policy statement for government, health sector is the only sector whose budgetary allocation is going to shrink up to 2027. So we are looking at 5.88% ministerial allocation this year. That number goes to 5.35 in the next 3 years. So government is actually shrinking the budgetary allocation to the health sector, number one. In the same period of time that they are shrinking from 5.88, it's not even 7%. Remember, we are talking about that Abuja declaration of 15%. We are at 5.88% this year, shrinking to 5.3. If you look at the same period of time, national government allocation is going to grow by almost 200 billion shillings over that same period of time. Just between 2023 and 2024, national government allocation is growing by 48 billion. Counties are only growing by 6 billion. So, and the counties are the ones which are apparently where healthcare is. There's a lot of dishonesty going on here. I am concerned that we have passed bills, primary healthcare bill, emergency and chronic illnesses disease. You look at the budgetary statement. The budgetary policy statement says 147 billion allocated for everything. On primary healthcare alone, our estimates are that we will need 70 billion. On primary healthcare alone for it to happen.
Which is half of the total allocation.
Half of the total allocation, and by the way, that 147 billion includes money to KEMRI, money to MTRH, money to KNH. I mean, it's ridiculous. We are not serious as a country. How can we allocate 147.5 billion this year and maximum of 160 billion in 2027, shrinking the budget by 0.5% in the next 3 years, and we say we are serious about healthcare?
Okay. Dr. Pukose, I'll come to you because there's a lot of feedback also. We need to take some questions. And this is largely on the question of accountability. And one of the major issues that the country had outlined to address when we gained independence, one amongst that was healthcare. The president, on many occasions, has talked about the responsibility he bears. And when he appears before God, we all will, on the day of judgment, as a leader, of course, that will again be another extra responsibility. And how much of a responsibility will Kenya's political class take if tomorrow will be judgment day as to why many Kenyans continue to suffer? And you have acknowledged here that we are way below the 15% Abuja declaration in terms of allocation to our healthcare system, the lack of or under-appreciation of our medical professionals, including other professionals as well, and why our healthcare system is in such a messy state.
Thank you for that. First, I want to respond to what Dr. Brian Lishenga talked about, the shrinkage of from 5.8 to 5.3%.
Yes.
That is not true.
But it is here.
No, that's not true.
No, it is here in the budgetary policy.
I'm putting it.
How can it not be
What,
true?
what,
I mean, this is
this is
a treasury, national treasury document.
What you are looking at.
I mean,
what you are
cannot say it's
what you are looking at. What you are looking at is what is indicated in the budget. But there are things
that is the intention of government.
That is what is indicated in the budget for what the government is going to be able to give in. But you have for primary health care and the social health insurance fund, you're going to get contributions from the members.
Abdi, have to.
Dr. Brian,
you're looking at that.
Allow me finish his point.
You are going to get.
You can only be fair to him.
You are going to
as
get
well.
contributions from members. That is money which is going to come from members' contribution. That is pay, social health insurance, which you are going to pay at around 2.75%. You're going to have 300 shillings contributed by those who are not employed. You have money which the government will budget to pay for the indigents. Yeah, that is not appearing into that figure. But secondly, under the division of revenue bill, you have money that has gone into the national government. What is looking at, that is the budget for the national government. You have in counties will be able to make their own budgetary allocations. After the division of revenue bill, whatever goes to Nairobi, Turkana, and all those other counties, they'll be able to prepare their own budget, and each county will decide what is the percentage that I'm able to give to health. Yeah. Then now when you get the national figure and what the average of what the counties have put into health, that is when you can be able to come up with the true figure.
Can I just say something?
He has not responded to my question.
I've not responded
so let
to
him
my
finish.
question.
I'll come to you.
Yeah. So whatever he's,
these things can be theorized. These things.
It's not theory.
Sorry.
That is,
let him respond.
That is how budget is prepared.
That is practical.
Yes,
I'm being practical.
Yes.
When you say the politicians, the political class, what responsibility
do they bear?
Bear?
Okay. Do you bear?
Because I'm in the same class as a political class.
Yeah.
The political class, we are the ones who will be able to make the policies. And during the campaigns, each political team has its own manifesto. What is it that we intend to achieve within that period of time? That is what we sell to the mwananchi, that we should be able to deliver that. And that is why when we get into parliament, we look at what laws can we be able to put in place to make sure that we are able to deliver on that we promise wananchi. And that is why, for example, when you come to the committee of, to the Ministry of Health, we promise on health matters. They have put it very rightly. We've already passed 4 laws. The health care, that is the primary health care fund bill, a digital health bill, the social health insurance bill, and the facility improvement fund bill. The next stage is how do we operationalize them? Through the regulations, which are in the process. I think the regulations, some of the regulations have already been submitted to the Committee on Delegation. So to achieve that process, it's not something that you'll be able to achieve overnight. It takes time. Even with the primary, when you look at even the primary, in terms of primary health care, issues about how do we put our primary health care into place through the community health promoters, what are making sure we're able to, working with both national government and county government to recruit 100,000 community health care workers, provide for them the health gadgets. Now we are even in this issue now of the doctors, which they are negotiating. And we think they'll be able to negotiate and agree. And whatever they'll be able to agree, then it will mean budgetary allocations. That budgetary allocation will come to Parliament, and whatever they have agreed, then we have to put it into the budget to make sure that we are able to deliver on that.
And anytime the Minister of Health reaches out to the National Treasury with regards to money, for example, meant for the medical interns, they are told to change your policies. There can be no more increment.
It's not changing of the policy. I think it's a question of resources being available.
No, brother. That's what is happening.
Whatever resource they have agreed on in terms of the Ministry of Health and the Treasury, and even Treasury gives them that money to be able to deliver on paying for the interns. That might not have been budgeted in the current budget, but they'll come under Article 223 of the Public Finance Management Act and will regularize that amount as budget through the budget.
Okay.
Because that is money that was not planned for.
Okay.
They have been given by Treasury. Then they'll they'll not need much justification from the Parliament to be able to agree that this is money that was not budgeted, but Treasury has given them, they have spent, and therefore we should be able to regularize. And we'll make sure that whatever they've agreed on will now be appearing in the budget for subsequent
does it then dawn on you?
Can I just correct something?
Does it then dawn on you, Dr. Pukose, that, for example, we seem to be given the reason that we have no financial space to cater for example, some of the issues that were fronted by the medical practitioners, pharmacists and dentists union. But on the flip side, we are creating positions for the chief administrative secretaries who will earn more than you, members of parliament, will have a mortgage, will have a car allowance, will have medical insurance cover for them and their families, and they may end up gobbling in 5 years more than 5 billion Kenya shillings. This is a money if channeled to the right priority areas. For example, healthcare, there can be no problem because we'll be solving a lot of other problems.
Unfortunately, in this country, whenever we discuss about let's say budgetary allocation or money being given for certain things, we tend not to focus on exactly the issue that we are talking about. We tend to pick scapegoats. We'll say, now look at the salaries of the members of parliament, look at what we are giving these CASs. We're only talking about 22 as per the law. I think about they're supposed to be 22. And yet we now hear about interns, we are talking about 3,570.
Who
is a huge number. So what we need to look at is to look at an item on its own merit and what it's all about. Instead of saying now, because we need to remove money from paying so and so, that issue of CASs, it's a necessity. It's a position that, like we used to have ministers and assistant ministers. That is no longer in our constitution.
The law does not envisage. So there's a reason as to why Kenyans voted for a constitution that creates a cabinet secretary and a principal secretary. And the ruling by the High Court was very clear last year that that position is not envisaged in law. And even Parliament, where you sit, you never vetted them.
But man is not made for law. The law is made for man. What happens is as you implement the law, even now, as we implement the law, we did not have the Health Service Commission. We don't have it in the law. But out of necessity, as you implement the law, there is a necessity that will come. That if, for example, if you have a cabinet secretary who is supposed to transact a certain business in this other area or in this other area, and the principal secretary is the accounting officer, would also be having commitments, then out of that necessity, out of application of the Constitution, we felt that with time, you'll need an assistant to the cabinet secretary. Just the way the Health Service Commission was not envisaged in our Constitution. But out of it now, we feel if we had a Health Service Commission, it's a necessity.
Thank you. I brought up that question because majorly it was on priority areas as a country where we need to be channeling our efforts and energy. Yes, Dr. briefly, before we get to the feedback.
Just what I want to say about, you ask about what's the role about for politicians and political leaders and the cabinet secretaries. I must say that these were more in the office for greed, and they're more into stealing and they're more into the individualism than into the healthcare service, than into the services they need to offer. Why am I saying
They
this?
will argue, Dr. Davji.
No, that's reality. I have said what is a fact.
They would argue that is blanket statement.
It's not a blanket statement. I want to justify.
If there are politicians in this...
Yes,
I mean, we have 400...
And the union...
Order.
That's reality. I am saying this.
Allow me to make the point so that you proceed and to give you the time to respond.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are to say that, then that is a broad brush painting of the entire 416 members of the bicameral parliament. There are some who serve this country with diligence.
Majority. Like my brother, this majority is what I'm saying about. What they stand for.
When you say all, when you say all are stealing,
that's not true.
Let me give you an
that's
example.
blanket statement.
His credit, he said cabinet secretaries. He didn't say parliamentarians.
I'm saying cabinet secretary because yesterday
you say
politicians. Politicians are part of it.
Yeah.
Like my brother here, you see, he's justifying unjustifiable.
Even him, as a unionist, is
hang on.
He's justifying unjustifiable. That he has some creation of necessity for the CASs, but he doesn't see the value of this Kenyan only the doctor in the hospital. And we see the cabinet sitting and saying, okay, for this intern, the 206,000, which is the entertainment allowance, is too much. Reduce it and let's take a cabinet stand to 70,000. That people who practice immorality. It is not justifiable. It is something that is not practical. And then we use the institution like SRC to propagate impunity because they know law exists. I am still shocked, really, I must say that a member of parliament who is the chairman of health committee will propagate breaking of laws, labor laws for workers, propagation of policies that actually are going to entrench slavery, and then say, no, we have a physical space.
That is a very weighty statement.
A physical space.
It's not true.
He is just here to propagate a stand.
No.
Whether a stand is wrong, or the stand does not make sense, that's what he's propagating. He's not having interest of the Kenyans who need healthcare in the hospitals, because that's what we're propagating. When we say...
What did he say that amounts to a submission?
When he said that we can just ignore the CBA and look at policy statement...
No,
it was implied. Yeah, why am I saying it was implied? Yeah. It was implied because he said the minister looked at the budget and wrote to SRC, and SRC gave a document without regard to an existing document that got letters of no objection from the SRC. So this is a reality that they are disregarding the existing employment policies so that they can exploit these workers. That's the reality. But then this happening when he's the person in charge of health committee. So that's what is propagating the impunity. I must say something, that as a political leader, we must be able to see the plight of Kenyans. When we as a union are pushing for doctors to be employed in the hospitals, it's not for us. When doctors in the hospital is going to help the Kenyans. The ratio of facility to the population of this country has surpassed what WHO recommends. But what about employment? When I asked this last time, he told me the counties, the issues of employment is devolved. But are they giving money to the counties? No. That was one of our demands in the strike, that there should be money for counties to employ and to make things work. When you talk about the interns, that they feel is too weighty out of the 150 billion budget in the ministry. What does the money go to? When what we need for interns is just about 3 billion. And what the generate for Kenyans over here is over 70 billion.
Thank you. Dr. Brian, the first question to you will be from our feedback. Let's now sample what Kenyans are saying. And the hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. This is what's coming up here on your screens. Yes, Frank Orinda says, KK regime and serious. They are currently busy pushing for the position of the chief administrative secretaries to reward their cronies with hefty pay packages, but they have no money to sort the doctor's pay. Where is the priority in this government? Bob, what you know, when I say conversation will go on about doctor strike, but their main agenda is they want health ministry to be reverted back to the national government from the county governments, hence hiding behind the strike since 2017. Okelo Mwalimu says one thing that all other trade unions must learn from the ongoing doctor strike is that success of the union depends on the resoluteness and determination of its leaders. I like the way KMPDU under Dr. Davji has converted lemon stone at them to lemonade. Impressive. Gabi Wakasiaka says, enraged with the increasing deaths in public hospitals, the government of Kenya has a conditional and moral duty to provide quality health care to every Kenyan. Over 500 people have died over the ongoing doctor strike. The government does not care about Kenyans. Mohammed says, if Honorable Pukosa thinks that the dues we pay for our membership is an exploitation, then we are unanimously allowing the union to even take more funds from us. Sir Nixon Dugura says, I now request whoever is concerned to stop collecting or deducting NHIF from our salaries and actually refund all the money collected from when the doctor strike began. The fund is equally on strike. Babu Michelle K says, I always wonder why governments always wait for a strike in almost every sector to implement a previously signed collective bargaining agreements. After the strike, they don't also come to the negotiation table with good faith. They hide behind the courts and use governors. Salim says, I think it will take an amalgamated effort from both parties to reach consensus concerning the pay of interns, especially from the government side, as they appear to be the less lenient party. Tim Kenya says, the wise man told his son that a time comes when you must leave group, think and make individual decisions. How will the medical unions help those medics who are being replaced, making noise in groups, but each will suffer alone? Engineer Lazaro says there must be give and take in a meaningful negotiations. Doctors should consider the state of economy, and government should also reason why paying semi-illiterate politicians millions of salaries while mistreating highly learned doctors. John Wangai, 19, says, our problem as a country is dishonest and selfish leaders who only care about their well-being rather than the poor Kenyans who have employed them. The government can't have money for CISs and useless priorities, according to him, but have nothing to pay doctors. It's so sad, he says. Brian Chemo says, if the doctors fail to attend the meeting, the government should consider reaching out again to schedule another meeting and also explore alternative avenues to address the healthcare needs of its people, such as deploying temporary medical staff. Yes, Dr. Brian.
First, let me just debunk something Dr. Pukosa said. Government cannot budget. It cannot budget on contributions of the general public. He said here that what I was talking about, the 160 billion, the 140 billion, does not include money that will come. There is no budget for shift contributions, so that is out of the question. What I was talking about here is that the national government is reducing allocations to Ministry of Health over the next 3 years, and they are introducing primary healthcare and chronic diseases and reallocating a very small amount of money. So let us not mix issues. The monies that Kenyans will contribute at 2.75% cannot be budgeted for by the national government. They cannot appear in the budget policy statement. Number two, I want to mention the issue of training. You mentioned the issue of training. I find this to be a very disturbing issue because it keeps coming back as an argument as to why we don't have physical space for taking up more interns. Do you know why universities today are increasing the number of medical trainees? It is because the same government is underfunding universities. And one of the most lucrative fields to train in Kenya for any university today is the medical sector. It costs you as an SSP student, at least at the very minimum, 500,000 shillings per year to train. If you extrapolate that over 6 years of training, to train a single SSP student for medicine is going to cost nothing less, in school fees only, nothing less than 3 million shillings. Why is it that universities have been pumping up the numbers of students who are training for medical, taking medical cases, and now increasing your interns? The reason is the universities are very rational. They are looking at all the courses available and they are asking themselves, where should we admit more students so that we can increase revenue? This is why the internship numbers are going up. So if government was to be honest about the number of interns being churning out, they look upstream at the education sector. Why are universities now pushing more medical trainees into the market? It's because that is where they can get money. Then let me make this point about priorities in government. If you look at the sector called Public Administration and International Relations, where Public Parliamentary Service Commission is, retired presidents, retired vice presidents, they are allocated in the budget for this year 300 billion shillings. Actually 299 billion shillings. Let me ask you, if we are serious as a country, now that 300 billion shillings is now 14.8% of the budget. If we are now serious as a country, shouldn't we be allocating that money to healthcare? The question should be, I mean, national government is gobbling up all this money. It's gobbling up this money in public administration, is where we have parliamentary service, IEBC, retired presidents. This is where the money is going. Every time we are told there is no money, you need to remember that even collections by KRA increased by more than 11% this year. But why is it that we don't have money? Because national government is gobbling up the money. Let us stop telling Kenyans this narrative that Kenya is broke. Kenya is not broke.
Yeah.
The person who is mismanaging money is the ones who are every year increasing allocations to themselves. And I want to make this statement as a private sector player. What I am observing, and I want to tell Kenyans, is that government is giving up on healthcare. This thing called publicly funded healthcare, you just need to look at how they are allocating budgets. If you can tell me you are shrinking budget for primary healthcare and chronic diseases over the next 3 years, it just tells me one thing: you are giving up on healthcare. And what is going to happen is, this is a preparation. I am not complaining as private sector, but I feel for Kenyans who cannot afford private sector healthcare.
And a majority of them can.
A vast majority of them. I feel for them, because what is going to happen with this hula baloo is the eventual collapse of the public health sector system. It is inevitable. The funding is too small. We cannot be serious as a country if, and you know, they are going to come to us in July and start telling us, private sector, that they want to contract us to provide primary health care where they are giving no budget. You know, we will not accept. We will not accept that. So, Dr. Pukose, as a parliamentarian, I want you to know that we as private sector can see from a far distance that you are giving up on the public sector. And we are ready to fill in that gap. But once we start filling in that gap, please do not start telling us you also want to regulate what we charge. Because this is the reality of the system that is being created.
Yes, Dr. Pukose. I'll come to you, Dr. Davji.
You know, Dr. Brian is double speak.
No.
Because he's saying, I'm seeing the public sector collapsing, and he's saying we are not happy as private sector, but at the same time,
as a doctor,
don't come and regulate us, because
he is prophesizing.
When you look at the budget program for Ministry of Health is actually increasing.
No, it's not.
You've not seen it. I've seen it as a chair. Because it comes to my committee. Initially, when you look at it, it's been increasing gradually.
Yeah. Can I just make this point?
It has been increasing gradually.
It is increasing by 7 billion between 2023 and 2024. But as a fraction of all revenue, it is decreasing.
Okay.
But he's accepting it is increasing.
It is increasing. It is not even keeping up with inflation.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Pukose, please proceed.
What I would want to say is that the healthcare system in this country, you know, the government has a program. We would not have been able to come up with the follows to make sure that this sector, you know, the process of healthcare management is a process. It's not a one-day event. It takes time. You must be able to put laws in place that will be able to anchor that. You must be able to put in regulations, and then gradually grow the budgetary allocation to make sure that those services are able to be delivered. When you look at our budgetary allocation for health, it has been growing actually, and it will continue growing as we implement the various programs. So, and the issue, when you say that you will not be able, that you cannot budget for the contributions that people are going to make in the act,
you cannot.
In the act. The Social Health Insurance Authority Board will not spend that money without bringing that budget for approval. Because in the past, they've been just, the board sits down, allocates that money, and then they are able to spend.
This is not government money.
This has been changed because whatever, it is public money. Even your own contribution as tax is public money.
We will make the
We must be able to make it accountable.
Yes. We must create custodian.
We must create systems that it makes it accountable, because
it's a custodian.
It has been abused. And that is why the law now demands that whatever is even after being collected, it must be subject to scrutiny. The Auditor General must be able to look at it, and that budget must be approved.
How will that money be spent?
The money will be spent. You have various funds. You have the primary health care fund.
Okay.
You have the social health insurance fund. You have the critical, emergency, and chronic illnesses fund. So for you to be able to spend this money, you'll know that once you are collecting this money, then you must be able to make budget. Once you make that budget, then that budget must be approved. After being approved, then you can be able to spend.
Okay.
No.
You mean
Because, but for the issue of remittances
yes.
to the various service providers,
yes.
that one will be subject to regulations.
Okay.
And those regulations will provide on how you are going to engage, because we now have the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council being able to inspect and register the facilities. Then those facilities that has been inspected by Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council are the ones that now the Social Health Insurance Authority will empanel them so for service provision. Those ones now, as they provide the services, then the fund must be able to pay them and in time.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Davji. I'll come to Dr. Brian.
You can't keep on talking about the laws and the bills and the reforms and the UHC when we have the doctors or the medical doctor interns salary being reduced, when the doctors are on strikes, when the clinical officers are on strikes, when the lab people are on strike, and when the nurses who are on the hospitals are wallowing in desperation and disillusionment. That is not a show of any plan to actually change healthcare. We have, I think, government that is more focused in politics, rhetorics, and PR than in solution to the healthcare, because all these bills does not treat people in the hospitals. And you see, it's a propagation of that things are okay, but things are not okay. And that's why I think for Kenyans to get healthcare, they need to ask for more accountability to these political leaders that have elected, like the member of parliament for NDBs. We ask now in those hospitals in the counties where there are no drugs, where there are no equipment, where there are no doctors. How will you tell somebody that they get services there? This can only happen if we tell these guys we've elected in office to get to understand the plight of the Kenyans. And this can only happen when they honor agreement. This can only happen when they act in honesty and they trust the process, not when they just decide who to exploit and who to pay better. And this is the only ask we're having. So as a union, we've said it, and we are in this process whereby we have seen government having very grandstanding on our issues, and they say they give warnings that they will fire all the doctors, they'll give them show-cause letters. But I must reiterate that for us, it's not a matter of theatrics or threats or intimidations or victimization that will work with us. What will work with us is that we must have the government respect and honor assigned agreements that will ensure that there's service to the hospital, there's dignity to the doctors, there's dignity to the patients. And therefore, at this point, I just want to say that yes, Cabinet may have endorsed this. Yes, the Ministry of Health may have brought this to SRC, but SRC circular that we keep on referring to of 70,000 was stayed by the court. So it doesn't really exist. And therefore, we want to ask the President, because the President is the mother and father of the country. He's the one who drives the universal health care. He's the one who wants Kenyans to access care. It's not the technical persons who are openly misadvising him at this particular point. He has to come out and make a decision on this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Brian, final words.
I think that we have a serious issue of priorities. Kenyans listening to us must be wondering, if the ministry has an allocation of 150 billion, let's say just this year, why are we haggling so much over 3 billion? It's like you have 150 bob in the pocket and I ask you for 3 shillings and you don't give me that 3 shillings because it will collapse the budget. I think this is a very dishonest discussion happening. And then number 2, I just want to reiterate to Mheshimiwa Pkosi as chairman of Parliamentary Health Committee that the allocations for healthcare in this country healthcare is grossly underfunded. If you look at the budgetary statement, which I will ask you to read again, the things that this government is celebrating, for instance, now as achievements, is that MTRH did 1.4 million laboratory tests instead of 1 million. So that they are the first in East Africa to have done over 1 million tests. The things that they are celebrating are things like in the year 2021-2022, they trained 200 border riders in Nakuru for first aid. these are not what we are talking about. What we should be talking about here is how do we move closer to Abuja Declaration, 15% of healthcare. People, the departments gobbling up money are these things called the public administration, gobbling up 15% of our revenues. You go down and you look at energy and infrastructure. We know why we are putting 29% of our budget in energy and infrastructure, because, Abdi, there is kickbacks. That is where at least you can get something out of an infrastructure project. Healthcare is underfunded chiefly because of one thing. Healthcare is human resource intensive. And when you are paying somebody's salary, there is no kickback to come back to you. So we would like to urge the government, very serious about the issue of funding healthcare. And for me, just speaking on the behalf of private sector, my concern is we created 4 laws, which my colleague here is misleading the public that there is money. There is no money. The primary healthcare, you asked him the question, how is it going to be funded? Primary healthcare is supposed to be funded by the national government. They have no money there. Emergency and chronic critical illness is supposed to be funded by national. There is no money there. So I plead, you as our representative, as a doctor, plead with you to go back to that select committee and get us money into healthcare. We need money for hospitals to function, to employ people.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Pukosi, your final word.
Thank you. First, I want to say that a primary healthcare fund will be funded, and similar to the chronic, emergency, and critical care, it will be funded, because that will be funded through the national government by the exchequer. Secondly, I want to urge the union, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, to go back to the negotiating table with the government. Negotiations are a tedious process. It calls for a lot of patience, tolerance. There is a give and take. So, and we also I want to also urge you that in as far as the minimum that the court has asked, please provide that minimum. And that minimum means we should not be losing the 500 Kenyans who have died since the strike began. No Kenyan should be turned away from the hospital because there is nobody to serve that person. There should be no pain for anybody who is sick, so that as a profession, we must also be able to give that is minimally expected of us, so that our healthcare system should not be able to collapse.
Thank you. Thank you, doctors. Your time is all appreciated. Yes, Dr. Gov't, 10 seconds, please.
Yes, I must say that I will ask the political leaders to know that their responsibility is not just for them to have the premium insurance. They must ensure that those who elected them have care. And therefore, when government takes a grandstanding on these issues, it means that the Kenyans are going to suffer. So we want them to actually be honest at the table and to be able to soften their stand to have these things sorted out.
Your time is all appreciated. Dr. Robert Pukosi is the NBS MP, the chair of the National Assembly's Departmental Committee on Health. Your time is appreciated. Dr. Brian Lushega is the Rural Private Hospitals Association of Kenya chairperson. Thank you. And also Dr. Gov't, the KMPDU, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, Secretary General, with us here on the broadcast this morning. Thanks for watching and waking up with us here on the broadcast. We meet again here on Friday morning. Till then, good morning by the grace of God.